uh, January 14th. And today I am here with Joe Sprangel. Welcome.
Hello there. I'm glad to be here with you today, Marie.
I'm happy to have you. So for those of you who are tuning in, or if you're listening later, let us know where you're watching from. I always love to hear where folks are watching from. Sometimes we get some international folks. And let us know how you take your coffee. I am obsessed with coffee, so much so that I named this show Coffee with Entrepreneurs. So let us know, say hello, and any questions that you have during this conversation, put them in the chat. And if you're listening live, we'll answer on the air, so to speak. And if you're not, then we'll answer later. So, Joe, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. How do you take your coffee? And if you don't drink coffee, how do you start your day?
So I don't drink coffee. I'm one of those few that don't. And I don't know why. I love the smell of it, but it just never was in my household when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Well, my dad would drink 1 cup of instant coffee each morning, but that didn't look real appealing to me. I'm an iced tea fan year round. I just straight, fresh brewed iced tea is my thing.
Nice.
And I would drink it all day long if I could, but I try to limit it just to the morning.
So you do get caffeine then?
I do.
You do get caffeine. You'd be surprised. I've had quite a few non-coffee drinkers on this show. So
yeah.
I don't know what that says about me, but I respect anybody that's not completely addicted to coffee. One of my Christmas presents this year was, or last year rather, was an espresso maker. So now I'm making my own lattes.
That's great caffeine.
Exactly. So I'm saving a lot of money, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because I used to have to go get them every day, it's been awesome, but I'm like super, super caffeinated now. Anyway, it's great to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. So my day job is Dean of the College of Business and Professional Studies at a small university in Stanton, Virginia called Mary Baldwin University. Mm-hmm. And I've been here for about 10 and a half years and been the dean for the last 4.5 years. And one of the programs that we have that I'm very proud of is our MBA that's actually focused on the 4 benefit industries. So we built our curriculum around the B Impact Assessment by B Lab, which is how companies can become certified B Corps. And we've integrated sustainability throughout both our undergrad and graduate programs in business. And so, as a B corporation, companies are looking to still make money, but they want to use some of that profit that they generate for social or environmental good. And so that's my day job. In the evenings and on the weekends, I'm launching a consulting company called Emmanuel Strategic Sustainability. And the focus there is to help manufacturing companies become more responsible. So in the past, too many organizations would come into a community, they would harvest all of the available resources, and then more or less leave a shell of the former community in their wake. Thankfully, that's not quite the norm anymore, but there are a lot of companies that could do a better job. And so I want to combine a lot of what I've learned as an academic with my own personal experience as a business person. I spent almost 30 years in manufacturing before I told people I had a midlife crisis and decided to become an academic. So
nice.
That's a little bit about me. I'm trying to help responsible manufacturing becomes part thriving communities and ultimately a better world. So, you got to have that tagline.
It's fantastic. I love it. And it's funny because the first time I ever heard about this, right, I thought, well, that's an oxymoron, right? Responsible manufacturing. I was like, because when I think of manufacturing, right, I think of these factories with smokestacks that have the black smoke coming out and all the pollution and, all the bad rap that comes with manufacturing. Yes. But you actually, it's kind of amazing because you do some really, you have a lot of focus around sustainability, not only for the environment, but right, for people who are underemployed, for the
Yeah.
formerly incarcerated. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, I always like to find ways to solve problems for multiple stakeholders. So one of the areas that I'm really focused on now is manufacturing has a really hard time filling all the available jobs. And in particular, those that are on the shop floor doing that kind of work. And, you talk about the old smokestack and the dirty environments and all that sort of thing. That's becoming less and less of the situation every day.
Right.
I think there will eventually be a day where people will be running a manufacturing site from their home office because it'll be so automated and everything will be connected. But in the interim, several years ago, I was introduced to an individual that his father had a son that was going to age out of the system that was autistic, and they decided to start a car wash. And what they ultimately did, they ended up kicking the snot out of every other car wash in the area, because these individuals, if you told them that you're responsible for the front passenger area and cleaning that, they do it exceptionally. And so, one of the thoughts that I have and that I'm working on is, okay, how can we help this particular population work in a factory setting to do that kind of work that requires that kind of attention to detail? And at the same time, it helps to fill open and available positions. And so many people are, they get lost after they age out of a system. And I think this is one of the ways that we can do this. As you're well aware, I've been looking at the prison industrial complex, and it just bothers me that in many cases, it's really successful corporations that are making wonderful profit margins. So it's not like they need this free help, but in some cases, they're paying less than $1 an hour for people that are incarcerated to be producing product or service for them. And so, there are those sorts of returning military, for example. I have a son-in-law that was in the Army, and through his lens, I've seen a lot of what individuals are dealing with that are coming back from their tremendous service that they provide to us, especially recently in the Middle East. And historically, I've found if I have two candidates that are almost as they have the same kind of background and credentials, and it's kind of an either or whether I would hire one over the other. If one had military experience, I always hired that person now. And I never got burnt by it, because they understand there's a job to be done and there's a way to do it, and that's what they do. And yet we know there are a lot of issues that they're dealing with. I mean, as I was talking to him the other day, I said, I don't even begin to understand it, but I know enough about it that we could do so much more as a society to help those individuals. And so as a more responsible company, if you're in a community where people are autistic, or they're returning for the service, or other areas like this, well, why not put something in place to help them to be a benefit to not only you as an organization, but to create that thriving community. So.
Yeah, and it sounds like and you're right, like especially with currently incarcerated people. Excuse me, it's they're lucky if they pay 11 cents an hour or whatever it is, right? So what you're actually proposing is pay a viable wage, right? And so that the formerly incarcerated person has some means when they get out, right? They have they kind of they have the job training, right? And they have some savings and some money set up.
And that's where I think corporations could then partner with other organizations to say, hey, we're going to provide some of this internally. Yeah, we may get some benefit from it, but we also want to make sure that these people have a great opportunity when they leave. So I understand that you probably don't want to pay somebody $15 an hour while they're incarcerated, because what are they going to spend it on? But they could be providing that to their family, or they could be putting it into some sort of fund that either could be for education or to cover some of their expenses when they get out until they can make that transition to a job. I mean, most of the people that are in jail right now, they never even come to trial,
right?
But they can't afford to pay, the bail to get out of the situation. And so while they're in jail, they can't, they can't go to work. And so when they can't go to work, obviously they get, let go from their position. And, if you sit in jail for a year because of something that may or may not ever come to fruition, it just doesn't make any sense at all. And so, so wherever possible, I mean, for me, manufacturing in particular, but business in general, created a lot of what we have for social issues, and also environmental, as you mentioned, with the smokestacks. And so I think it's our responsibility to help fix a lot of these. I mean, one of the really neat examples is Greyston Bakery in New York, where you're at. They're a company that makes brownies, and part of them go into Ben and Jerry's. So, talking about BCorporations, well, they're one of my favorites. I'm definitely one that enjoys that particular product.
Yeah, me too.
But they have an open hiring policy. They ask 0 questions about where you come from. All they want to know is, do you want to work? And if you do, then here's what you need to do to be successful at our organization. And they're so successful at it, they actually put on training programs for other companies that want to be able to do the same. And so, to be honest, I can remember one day when I was driving down the road, I looked down on the floor at something, and then I looked back up, and literally it was probably several feet away, but it looked like several inches between me and some guy walking down the side of the road. I could have easily hit that person, killed that person, and been incarcerated.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been because I'm a bad individual or whatever the case may be. And so, and I realize there are some people that are really bad, and maybe they do need to be incarcerated. But there are so many that they just, for whatever reason, they get into it for the wrong reasons. Or it might even be the right reason. If my child's starving, might I steal something?
Absolutely. 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 And it's funny because you're hitting on something that's very much in the consciousness, right? It's some crazy percent. I think it's like 90% of people incarcerated are incarcerated for nonviolent crimes. So jaywalking, or speeding, running, not paying your parking tickets, or having a small amount of marijuana on you, right? Which is now becoming legalized across the country, but people are still in prison for it and in jail for it. And so what you're talking about is really giving, people like this who have, I mean, I know, just like the example that you said, where you could have hit somebody, right, and been incarcerated for something that you did by accident. I'm sure the same is true about me, right? Like we're lucky, what I mean? So it's just a matter of giving people the means to get out of the situation that they're in, which is awesome. I'm reminded of a colleague of mine who has a restaurant in Times Square, and of course now it's COVID, so who knows what's happening. But it's right off of Broadway. And she hires almost exclusively formerly incarcerated people. And it's one of the most popular higher end restaurants on Broadway. And you just it's kind of amazing. You wouldn't know if you didn't know, you wouldn't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So and how does somebody like me then help with this? How do we help raise awareness? How do we help, make sure that this happens more often?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other day I was listening to a podcast that someone else had done. And one of the comments they made is, we decided to do this. And if one person came and we helped them, then that was good. Then I was okay with that. And I really do think there's a lot of that is just going to be this ripple effect that we need to go out and do what we can individually and then tell somebody about it. I've always been one of those, nose to the grindstone kind of people, and my work will be, recognized and everybody will appreciate the wonderful things I'm doing for the organization. And what I realized after a while is they don't notice anything that you're doing. In fact, they don't think you're doing your job because you're not telling them anything. And so I do think that's one way. we talked about the prison industrial complex. And one of the ways you can do is go on and Google search and say, well, who are the people that are doing this? And if they are, and you're currently using them as a source of business or service, then you can choose not to do that. And then you can share that again with other people, that I went to, I used to go to X restaurant, and I've learned that they do this, and I'm not doing it anymore. So we all know that, the power
that works.
You in particular know about the power of social media, right? Because that's a lot of what you do.
Right.
And, that message can get really quickly spread in that manner. And then maybe if you work for an organization, say, hey, we have this problem. We can't find enough people. Have you thought about hiring, people that have been previously incarcerated? Yeah, maybe we don't want people that, did violent crimes or huge drug trafficker or whatever. But can we look at, candidates that, and so, every one of us has a circle of influence that we can go to and say, hey, this is something that's of interest to me. What could we do to maybe help? And not only, it's not some crazy idea. Here's evidence that shows that it actually works with these various companies that are doing it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I off the top of my head, right? I can think of several boycotts, that have really made a difference, right? If you get on social media and say, I don't use this product because they, I don't know, donate to, and whatever it is, right? Or they mistreat their employees or whatever it is, right? That money talks. So, if you vote with your dollars and you stop using a product because of, the conditions that they, if they're paying their incarcerated employees 7 cents an hour or whatever. Right. So you're really, that works. It for lack of a better, it just works. So that's kind of the first step. I love that. What are you excited about going forward with this? Or do you sort of have any projects that you're working on right now that you're like, okay, this is this is making a difference?
Yeah. So as you're well aware, we met through the recognized expert community through Dory Clark. And, I'd gotten excited about 15 years ago about sustainability and how business can be used as a force for good. And, and I've been able to do some of that in a variety of settings, both manufacturing and, in the academic world. But for whatever reason, I thought, this sounds like a really good thing to do. And so what could be a next path? So as I went through this recognized expert course, it has changed how I look at things. So I mentioned that nose to the grindstone approach. Well, Ron Carucci and others that we know in that community, we're doing the same thing. And what I'm excited about is that, it's about a 2-year process. I'm into at the end of the first year, and I'm starting to see the fruition of that. Right. So earlier this week, I was on another podcast with another member of that community. I'm here today. I hope to be able to do this with others. And and so, I have a much stronger LinkedIn presence now. I'm actually excited about. I'm posting weekly on the manufacturing responsible approaches, and I'm taking all of that and sitting down now daily and writing a book about that. And it's going to be kind of a framework for, I'm here, status quo. I want to move to something. Eventually, I'd like all of us to be running regenerative manufacturing facilities where we're having zero in net impact. In fact, not only having zero, we're actually returning to the environment, sort of thing, and society. And so, those are all the things that are exciting me right now. Is and it's kind of weird, but at 61 years old, I was still having that. Well, who are you, and what do you know? And this work with all of you it's helped me to realize, you actually know some things, and you can make a difference in the world.
So the coaches in our community would call that imposter syndrome, and
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sad to know that it never goes away.
And that, I mean, that's one of the most
You know,
exciting things, is to realize that, oh, I'm not so abnormal after all. We all deal with this crazy stuff that goes on in our brains. So,
yeah, it's
but
it's funny because I hear people who have, either who are in the recognized expert community, or have been kind of working in the consulting space for forever, and they still deal with it. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, there were days when I would drive to, on my way to teach a class, and I would go, why am I the person that's teaching this course? And then it's like, you got 30 years of manufacturing experience. You have all kinds of degrees up to a doctorate. You probably have something of value you can offer these people. So
that's not nothing. That's
no.
A lot of social proof, as Dory would say.
Oh, I understand completely, but I didn't believe that.
So Gordon here says there's also financial underwriting provided by various municipalities and government agencies to businesses that formerly incarcerated individuals. Have experience with that?
I mean, I tangentially know that occurs, but I appreciate Gordon mentioning that, because that's something I should also look at to see. Well, in fact, I probably know more about it than I'm remembering at the moment, because I do know there are programs where, they will contribute a certain dollar amount per hour, sort of thing, and sometimes I think even up to the full amount.
Yeah.
And so thank you, Gordon. I appreciate that. So.
Yeah, it's good for people to know. It's because it's something that it's sad, but it's not something that we told about. It's that is really in the public business owner consciousness, I think, which is why we need people like you to teach us how to do it, right? To show us, to facilitate that.
Yeah, and an example, I don't know the background of this individual story, but I was out doing a run about this time several years ago, and there was actually snow on the ground, and some guy was walking down the road pushing a bicycle. And, I asked, hey, what's going on? And so I'm on my way to work at McDonald's. And so, oh, yeah, well, where are you coming from? Where are you going to? This was going to be like a 5-mile journey to go to a minimum wage job. I thought, if I had a job opening, I'd have hired that guy in a spot, and I'd have picked him up every morning and took him home at night, because it's like, those are the kind of dedicated people I want, and yet they don't get that opportunity. I worked for I shouldn't say, I was a board member of a nonprofit that helped people that had issues with their homes. And so many people are at a point where they don't make enough money to be able to meet their minimum needs, but if they can get more money, then they can't get the help they need to get to a point where they could actually be financially viable.
Right.
And that's, again, where I think, a manufacturing environment can help that. I mean, they're generally high paid jobs. I probably have $60,000 worth of education. I think all but 10,000 of that was paid for by former manufacturing employers.
Wow.
And so there are those kind of opportunities. And even things like, some countries in the world will actually have you do service, in the military or whatever, when you're a youth. I mean, I can even see that sort of program where, when you're in college, okay, go do something to help a manufacturing environment.
Yeah.
You get good money for the work you're doing, have a cooperation with that particular employer, with the university, to be able to say, okay, we know they're working second or third shift. We need to offer classes in a particular way, or even if they're working first shift. But, I just think there's so many different ways that we can then create this stronger community, right? That somebody that wouldn't otherwise be able to make the leap from underserved, opportunityed individual to somebody that now is working in a manufacturing environment that can then help them to get the education they need, that then can help them to get a better job, that ultimately they can do more to help their families as they bring them along. and it just keeps raising that bar up for each of these individuals. And there's just too many of us, and I'm guilty as well in the past, that I didn't pay enough attention to what I could be doing to help those outside of the factory walls. So.
Right. And it's like, so first of all, that's amazing. That would, I feel like that would solve a lot of the student debt crisis that's going on right now.
Yeah.
Because we just
yeah, I mean, that is a huge issue as well.
Yeah, we're just not we're not taught that that this is available to us, right? We just don't know. And so I think that, and like you were mentioning before at the beginning about the guy and his autistic son who started a car wash, right? And they blew the competition and out of the water. I mean, I think that kind of thing, it's just so not, it's not thought about, right? We don't think of like how can, what can people do, right? What can people like that do to become productive and to become independent members of society, right? After they age out of something.
And a lot of it's that perception, right? You think manufacturing is smokestacks and all that sort of thing. And most people think, oh, autistic, they just can't, they can't do anything to be helpful. And it's like everything. There's a complete scale, right, of somebody that is very much unable to do things to help themselves even, let alone to be able to help someone else. But there are others where, they're on the different part of the spectrum where actually they will be better employees for you and than maybe some of your traditional employees. But we don't know that. So, we have to, and so that's going to be one of the areas in the book that I'm writing is that here are a lot of different ways that manufacturing can help solve their needs by hiring these various groups that would really be beneficial to the organization.
Amazing work. I'm excited to see to read your book when it's ready, and I'm excited to see. We'll have to have you back when the book comes out and have a conversation around that.
I would love it.
So, how can people get in touch with you?
So from a university perspective, it's J Sprangel at marybaldwin.edu. So SPRANGEL. And then they can also find my consulting website at emmanuelstrategicsustainability.com. And look forward to talking or interacting with anybody that'd be interested.
I hope I spelled this right. Hold on. There we go. Did I spell it right?
You did. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. I'm like, Emmanuel, does that have 2 M's, 1 N? How does that work?
It's funny because on my application with the city, I actually spelled it wrong initially.
It's, I have a difficult name, so
yes.
I have my last name misspelled on all kinds of that. So
well, our last name, it's...
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, our last name, people go Strangle, Spangle, Spangler, it's like every conceivable wrong way you can say our name.
Yeah.
And my wife will say SPR Angel, because it was Sprangel, you'd think it'd be Angle, right? But but it's not spelled L-E, it's E-L. So. But I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, no, it's all good. I was going to ask you, what should I have asked you that I haven't?
I mean, for me, one of the things that I think is going to make the biggest impact from an entrepreneurial standpoint is organizations that want to adopt this B Corporation model. It really is exciting to see what happens with companies that do it. They again, they want to make money, but they want to also do something to help from a social and environmental perspective. So Patagonia is one of the more well-known companies. And because they were into rock climbing and they saw the damage they were doing with the implements, or whatever apparatus, whatever they call it, they came up with more responsible ways. And then they also donate some of their money to environmental causes. And so, it's fabulous to see how successful a lot of these companies are. And, I believe in it so much so that I'm working to create, my own company as a B Corporation. It won't have the same impact it might have on other organizations, But those that I've actually been able, I did research at a company called Impact Makers, and Michael Perron took a company that he developed with $50 in a laptop, and it was worth millions of dollars. And he was giving 100% of their profits to local nonprofit organizations to support their efforts. And eventually he gifted the entire company that when it sells, 70% of it will go to a local community foundation and the other 30% to a Virginia Community Capital that provides resources for people that want to start socially responsible businesses. And the key that I could tell you that came out of that, and that I've found in several other instances, is that people want to work for a company that is socially responsible.
Yes,
it
absolutely
attracts the people. And I can still remember one individual telling me that, I love the fact that when I'm doing my job every day, I know I'm benefiting those that have greater needs in my community. And I don't have to go sit on a board at, nights and weekends, because I not only are profits going to it, but they also donate pro bono services to companies. And so here you have a leading edge software company that's helping you to develop a platform for a small nonprofit that would never be able to afford that. And so, I love everything about that particular model. And those that are interested in that can go to BCorporation.net. And it's just a fabulous story about how this movement continues to grow and grow. They're not the only ones. There's Tugboat Institute, Conscious Capitalism. I mean, there are many, many, many different organizations that are doing it. The thing I like about the B Corporation model is that B impact assessment that I talked about, where they're focused on the community, customer, environment, governance, and the workplace, and the worker in the workplace. And basically this entire framework where you can take all and answer all the questions that are part of it, put together supporting documentation. And if you can score 80 out of 200 on this survey assessment, you can then apply to become a certified B Corp. And you might think, well, wow, 80 to 200, that seems like a really low bar. Well, a lot of the reason for that is that not every company can get every point. And so it does have kind of it's able to adapt if you're a company that's like 1 to 10 people, or a global corporation like Danone that is one of the largest certified B Corps, where they're certified here in North America, for example. So it started out as a very small company movement, and it's making more inroads into medium and now large corporations as well. So I just, it's just one of many things that do excite me, that so many businesses realize that, actually doing the right thing, it's more profitable, which, wow, that's great. But I feel better about the fact that I'm doing the right thing. So, So overall, if people leave with nothing else, this is the way to be a better company for you and all of the various stakeholders that you impact.
Yeah, I mean, if you, just in terms of this corporate social responsibility, that stuff matters, especially with millennials and Gen Z is going to be coming into the workforce. That matters, and you have higher employee retention, you have higher employee engagement. It can really make or break your company. So I
mean, when you have motivated and engaged employees, they actually treat the customer in a more positive and upbeat manner, and so on. And so you get more customers or returning customers, or, I don't know about you, but if you talked about a restaurant, if I go into a restaurant, I'll get the service that I think I should, I don't go back. I don't tell anybody about it, but I go back to those places that have employees that take good care of me. They're engaging, they're excited about what they're doing. And, I can still remember going through, one of my addictions is Taco Bell. We talked about caffeine. I don't know why.
I understand why.
I should be, supporting the local Mexican restaurant, but I love Taco Bell. So I do frequent that on occasion. And I still remember going through one where I drove up and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get through this line. I might as well not. And next thing I know, I'm like the first car at the window, and it's like, wow, what are they? I wanted to go in and say, what are you doing in here? Because you're taking, minimum wage people that are probably, in high school or whatever, deemed unhireable by anyone else. And
right.
You're just kicking it, man. And so much of everything that goes on, you can do incredible things. So
yeah. Diamond was saying you have you can use the acronym ESS.
Yes. Apparently I like my logo either, so I'll have to work on that. So
well, that's good. I guess she's going to your website and checking it out. So that's awesome. Yeah, no, it's totally true. I mean, you see things like Shake Shack. Shake Shack does so much corporate social responsibility, and their profits have what, doubled in the last 5 years or tripled or something like that, and they get a lot of good press. I mean, they return their economic impact disaster loan because they just didn't need it, and so they got a lot of really good press, as opposed to like something like Chick-fil-A that gets bad press, and so people boycott that, right? And so. Right. It can be really you can see the significant impact and but I like Taco Bell, so.
And I appreciate Diamond's thought about the long domain name. I know I've struggled with that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a social media person or a website developer, so. When I did develop all that, as you also know, when you're starting out a company, you do everything yourself, and eventually, you and I've had conversations about the fact that you could help me in many ways. So, and so yes, I thank you. I appreciate it, Diamond.
Well, I will tell you what I did, and much to the chagrin of the rest of my family, is I bought out my last name. This way nobody else can have it. So you might look at, sprangl.com. Well, awesome, Joe. Thank you so much for being here with me today. It's been wonderful. And if you have any manufacturing questions, be sure to go to the website, Emmanuel Strategic Sustainability.com, EmmanuelStrategicSustainability.com. And
additional support for Diamond, that the name may need to be improved.
Yeah. Well, I like ESS, but I also I don't know. I mean, I think there's value in having your name as the brand, and also having, so I don't know. Think about it. I
will.
But it's good. So I will see you on the other side. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to those of you who have commented. If you're joining us later, check in and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. We'll be on LinkedIn. We'll be on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll answer any questions you have.